generic Arnie Meyer. So I'm just going to read about Bill C-18 because, I post an awful lot of talented, videos online and I get zero traction. I get zero likes and it's pretty strange because my social media gets much views every day, but officially I'm not famous. That's pretty strange. So let's see what Bill C-18 says for Canadians. Bill, why would Bill C-18 restrict someone? Let's see what the internet says for this. Bill C-18 is also known as the Online News Act, restricts how digital platforms can share and monetize news content from Canadians. News organization, it says from Canadian news organization. It requires large platforms like Google and Meta to negotiate fair deals with news publishers for using their content. In response, these platforms have blocked or limited Canadian news on their platforms. This means Canadians have limited access to news content through these platforms and news organizations and may face challenges in reaching their audiences. Okay, well, I'm not a news organization. Okay, so impacts. Bill C-18 compels large digital platforms to negotiate with deals Canadian news businesses are using for their content. So impacts. Canadian users may have limited access to Canadian news content on platforms like Facebook or Instagram. They may need to visit news websites directly to find alternative ways to access news. So let's see. Okay, so let's see. So that just seems like it's for news organizations. So how come does Bill C-18? Oh, wow. So they just they put in that. So here is so here's the perpetrators right here. You can see how many times I clicked, and so that's their family that gets that. So here is all the culpability right there. And that's all the extortion attempts that they've tried to make. So, wow, that's pretty strange that that happened to me when I was an infant. And they pretend that I'm... so this is what happens here. They pretend that I'm a different person all the time. That they pretend that people have more than one body and more than one brain. So that's strange. They try to throw me under the bus there, some losers. And so they'll meet their karma very soon. Bill C-18 restricting, because really those people, individuals, I'll just show you here, individuals. So here's all the typos they made me call. So here's all the people that do all that, and they get all the acclaim, but I don't. Wow, that's pretty strange when you put it that way. Bill C-18 is designed to restrict individuals. It says new. It doesn't say anything about individuals on here. So how come? What does it mean for you? What can individual rights and freedoms? Okay, let's see what this is. The rights and freedoms in the Charter of Rights are not absolute. They can be limited to protect other rights of important national values. For example, freedom of expression may be limited by laws against hate propaganda or child pornography. Well, there's none of that on my website unless they add it subliminally. Right, so there's no hate propaganda. On the songs that I put a guy in a street flush, there was no hate propaganda on that, or child pornography, unless they added it subliminally. So that's pretty strange, Canada. Pretty strange that you restrict, once again, you know that you're going to end up having to answer to me, Christian Eric Arnie Meyer. So that's pretty strange that I'm restricted based on hate propaganda and you add in subliminal to my websites. Right, so that's pretty strange that you just try to add it right by the camera button right there, and then all those people right there, there's your home addresses and your IP addresses. And then with brain-computer interfaces, here's what your DNA looks like, and here's what your actual faces look like. So that's pretty strange that you pretend to be me, and those people get a lot of acclaim. They get a lot of acclaim, but in Canada, here's the Canadian ones that get a lot of acclaim, but how come Christian Eric Arnie Meyer, how come I don't? When I put somebody on a straight flush, There was 2 straight flush possibilities. There was a 4 of a kind possibility. There was 3 full houses, 6 straights, a 3 of a kind, and 3 2 pairs. The odds were, I thought it was centillion because they hacked me, but the odds were quintillion. That was 5,197 quadrillion, or 5,197,000 trillion, or 5,197,000,000,000 billion. The odds of me putting on that hand, and I did it on film, and I didn't get famous. That's pretty strange, Canada. How come you restrict me right now? I'm not streaming this live, Canada, so why are you trying to restrict me now? You don't have any say over any of these platforms. You can't say national security interests when I am the national security protector. Right, so you can't. Remember, you're just a politician, Carney. You manipulated the election through dream conditioning, and here's the proof that. There's the proof of that right there. So you manipulated the election through dream conditioning, and remember, politicians have a shelf life of 4 years. You know that I'm the true monarch of the United Kingdom. It's unequivocal that Christian Eric Carney Meyer is the true monarch of the United Kingdom, and all monarchies on the planet. Here's my relations to every monarch on the planet, and I'm the true monarch. So you know this, and you knew that there was here's the amount of money that the Canadian budget spends to protect Christian Eric Carney Meyer, myself, every day, and here's the money that the government spends to protect Mark Carney every day. So you can see that it is dwarfed in comparison. So you have a budget to protect me, Christian Eric Carney Meyer, and you don't do so. How come you pretend that all these people are me every day, Mark Carney? How can you pretend that every day? Once again, how come I can make wrinkles disappear at will? How can you pretend? How come when Canada offered me money to buy my blood, how come they just proliferated it right there? So here's the spoofed information. So anybody that tries to manipulate my blood or my DNA, so they'd be tracked and hunted by the internet and processed accordingly. Right. So anyway, so they how come the Canadian government offers to buy my blood because it's exotic, and they never told me that it had any evolutionary characteristics? How come I try to fight online and prove that I have evolutionary characteristics? How come right now you're saying that I have a mental health disorder? And once again, this is me adjusting the testosterone in my brain or estrogen in my brain. So this proves that it's impossible for me to have a chemical imbalance. If I, with evolved human characteristics, would have a chemical imbalance, every single human on the planet would. So once again, here's them trying to simulate being me when I do these things. So if that's the case, how come every other human on the planet doesn't have a mental health diagnosis? How come the most advanced, capable people on the planet seemingly have mental health issues and are violated as such? Right, like lesser extent to my son, but here's the cons. Here's how much money they spent trying to simulate sexual deviance in me and my daughter, Kaylee Jordan Meyer, right there, Kelly Jordan Meyer, and my son, Chase Alexander Barry Meyer, and they're both white individuals, and so there's my kids right there. That's the true one. So I had to bluff it, and when I was speaking of it, I mentioned how I did have to bluff it because people pretend to be me, and they try to hide by the bottom there, and when I hit cancel, that just only exacerbates their problems that they're going to have, and these individuals that violate my kids. So how come they spent trillions of dollars to try to cultivate sexual deviance? How come every single time I masturbated, how come I was victimized, Canada? And here's the percentage of times that I masturbated that I was victimized. And here's the percentage of times that I wasn't victimized. So ignore non-organic both ways. So here's the real number. Right. So because I was going to say that I wasn't victimized. So they showed that I wasn't victimized 0% of the time, and that I was victimized or wasn't victimized 100% of the time. Right. And that's wrong. That's incorrect. There's so once again, here is how many times I've been victimized when I masturbated, and by how frequently and how many times. And so here's how many times, the percentages of times that I was violated with electronic brain-computer interface and neuroprosthetics, that I was violated when I had sex with my wife. 100% of the time. So once again, Canada, so when I was at the Consent and Capacity Board, did Mark Carney leverage the Consent and Capacity Board to only take in hearsay and ignore all factual evidence that I submitted? right? Wow, that's strange. That's strange. So how are you going to answer that? So when I was circumcised as a baby, so I'll show subliminally. This isn't for children. This is they made me say the opposite. This isn't for children. So once again, this is they're trying to proliferate child pornography and subliminally, and I'm against it. And so this is all the perpetrators right there, and it just shows that I'm not Mark Carney, right? And so it just shows all the perpetrators that are trying to and this is what they're doing to my brain to try to make me blush right now. So these are all the perpetrators that are lying, and I'm going to speak on different frequencies because the Canadian government, they pretend they're not competent. Well, they pretend they're not liable, right? That they're not competent. So if they're not, like, once again, this program that I'm filming on, it should time out at a set interval, not when I see something contentious, right? So once again, how many times did Mark Carney try to set me up with the CCC board? So I'll say it again. So once again, how many times did Mark Carney try to set me up with the CCC board? That's the Consent and Capacity Board in Canada. How come Canada can have a witch hunt and just say that somebody is a threat to themselves or another person that can be held against their will? I've been held now for, once again, they're trying to pretend that I'm not Christian Eric Carney Meyer, and this is the same person in the video, right? So here's all the perpetrators that use subliminal. So you can't say this is hate speech, or this isn't hate propaganda, this isn't child pornography. Stop adding things to my videos. Stop adding things to my videos. I speak overtly, and I am communicating that subliminally. I am showing subliminally, but I never added pornography, child pornography to any images. I've never added child pornography. I'm against child pornography. I've never masturbated to any child pornography ever in my life. And how many times has Mark Carney? Right, so wow, so that seems that how come somebody that's trying to stop my efforts to stop child pornography and bestiality, how come my efforts are ignored? And here's who thinks I'm the smartest human that ever lived, and how come they're not following my organic directive? Once I realized December 13, 2024, that I was controlling the planet, basically subconscious with my mind, how come the Canadian government very rarely follows my organic directive? How come they victimized me for many years? How come they never told me that I have evolved characteristics? How come they were willing to take my blood and offer me a putrid amount, like a paltry amount of money? It was kind of putrid, like in valuation, right? It was paltry in like $60 for my evolutionary blood. That this is how many people my blood saves with one pint of blood. Right, 1 pint of blood, it saves a lot of people, right? And so the fact that the Canadian government tried to exploit it for $60, right? And the fact that the Canadian government pretends my daughter, Kaylee Jordan Meyer, has a mental health issue. She has evolved human characteristics. What are the chances that people that have evolved human characteristics, that means evolved charisma, this is my natural voice. When I speak like this, my natural voice, and here's how many people want to find out what I'm doing right now. That's my natural voice when I speak like this. Right, when I submitted evidence to the Consent and Capacity Board. So here's the proof right there. There's my family members right there that were at a royal wedding, and I'm a result of it. I'm a result of a royal wedding. And they said at the Consent and Capacity Board, they based it on hearsay, even though my lawyers said quite fulsomely I represented myself, and it wasn't clear, cogent, and compelling that I was a threat to myself or any other individuals. And but all I'm trying to do with the subliminal system is to protect mankind, right? And like anybody would do, anybody that had an opportunity to be heroic, they're gonna do so accordingly, right? So once again, how is this against national interest, Mark Carney? How come when the Liberals have been in power, how come child pornography went up? One source online said 565%. Another source said 270%. How come immigration doubled in that time period? And, in countries where there's, in Denmark, it's primarily a Caucasian country. And did you know that the news anchor, she reveals her breasts on the news? You watch the news and you can see her cleavage. But there's other countries where you can't even see their ankle, and without men being aroused. Like, so here's proof of that right there. right? So the likelihood in how come Caucasians are seemingly profiled more than any other ethnicity. I'm at the mental health ward, and in the shelter system, I mainly see Caucasians and Indigenous people. Like in our civilization, we have strip bars, and we have nude beaches, and we have beaches where women wear scantily clad clothing. But other countries, they don't have these things. And how come since the Liberals have been in power in the last 10, 15 years, or whatever, when they were elected, child pornography went up, and how come immigration went up? That's a pretty strange parallel. That's a pretty strange parallel. And, I'm at the Serial Hospital right now, and you know what? There's only one visible minority that is a non-Indigenous Canadian, right? And that's pretty strange. And if you were to go to the shelter in, there's plenty of minorities in CSM right now. Actually at the Serial Hospital, there's almost more East Indian workers in the mental health wing that I see than there are Caucasian men. With minorities, there's 3 black doctors. Let's see, there's 3 Indigenous, East Indian canteen workers. There's 2 brown Asians. And then, so let's see, so that's 7. No, that's 8. That's 8. And so let's see, now there's 2 nurses, 3 nurses. And then there's 3 attendants, 4 attendants, and then 1 activity guy. So there's 8 Caucasians. And even though Caucasians make up 75% of the population, probably even more so in Sault Ste. Marie. So how come it's easier for visible minorities to get a job in Canada? This is proof. This isn't hate propaganda. This is being an observation, a pattern recognition specialist. Here's what I scored with this is the percentage of brain that they allotted me to use, and this is what I scored for pattern recognition on my IQ test when I was 13 years old. So it's off the charts. So I recognize pattern. Do you know when you're a white business owner, you're an equal opportunity employer? But when you if you could go to any restaurant in Toronto right now, or any big city in Canada, if you were to go to a jerk restaurant, that's a Jamaican restaurant that specializes in jerk chicken, and you're not going to see any Caucasians working there, right? But or if you go to say a Japanese sushi place, you're not going to see any Caucasians working there, right? But if you go to a Korean restaurant, you're not going to see any Caucasians working there. A Chinese restaurant, you're not going to see any Caucasians there. A halal restaurant, you're not going to see any Caucasians there. But every Caucasian business employs people equal in opportunity, regardless if they have disabilities or what have you, right? So how come this isn't hate propaganda, and there's no child pornography that I'm at, and subliminal whatsoever? I'm against. I loathe child pornography and child porn and predators. These are the people that they use brain-computer interfaces and neuroprosthetics to steal human attributes. And before I was born, Canada was 27th in the world in Olympics in 1976, and then I was born in 1977, and they boycotted the 1980 Olympics, and then Canada in 1984 went from 27th to 6th place. What are the chances of that? How many Canadian Olympians benefit off of Christian Eric Arnie Meyer's biology? Wow, so it seems that I'm restricted and I'm profiled in a system. How come Canada has a special system just for me to stop me from stopping predators? Now how come? I'm tired of this. One day you have to answer to me as king.